Hello, kiddies. It's your old pal, John Kassir, the voice of the Crypt Keeper. And you're listening to The Bottom Shelf.
All right, man, that last movie was so terrible. I need something Spider-Man related that's actually decent. I think I'll play some Spider-Man 2. Where's my Spider-Man 2 case? What is this? Why is it covered in webs? What? There's a note. Um John.
Yeah. What?
Um so Force Ghost Branson has left us a gift.
Why is it covered with spirit Halloween webs?
I don't know. Is that silly string? What is happening here? No, he said he found it at the bottom of the dumpster.
And there's a white nylon rope wrapped around it.
I'm very confused. It says, thanks for letting me hang. Watch this tonight. And P.S. I have my own thoughts. Why does this
Okay.
look so cheap?
I thought we were gonna do something good.
Prepare yourself to discover a world of terrible movies. High above the planet Geekery, a group of intrepid explorers hover over the dangerous planet in their fabulous super-orbital spacecraft. Their mission? To conduct a complete analysis of movies known throughout the universe as terrible. So grab your space popcorn, grab your freeze-dried ice cream, and join us for today's mission of discovery and wonder. Are these movies better than the galaxy thinks? Or do they really belong on the bottom shelf?
Hello, movie lovers and movie haters. Welcome to The Bottom Shelf, a podcast as part of the Geek Devotions Podcast Network, a network of podcasts that are devoted to letting you know that you're loved. So if you don't listen past this moment of this, we love you. We care about you. There is a plan and a purpose to your life. Do not give up. And today, ladies and gentlemen, not giving up today with me is my good friend, my buddy, the game master himself, and a talented musician, John. How are you?
You don't gotta lie to kick it, but I appreciate the comments nonetheless. What's up, everybody?
So, ladies and gentlemen, last episode we watched a film and we dumpster fired it. I think.
Yes, we did. It was a disputed dumpster fire. You gave it a bottom shelf. Bam and I both torched it.
Yes, and then Branson disappeared into the ether as a blue force goes. Oh.
He went back over to the Gundam Galaxy. So
yeah, he's chilling over there. So I have split personalities, so I'm in both places at the same time. That being said, ladies and gentlemen,
I'm a Mog, half man, half dog. I'm my own best friend.
But he's left us a gift here. Let me look at the what does this say here? The Amazing Spider-Man. What? This doesn't look like Spider-Man. I know Spider-Man.
It doesn't look that amazing either.
John, this says it's from 1977. Let me read this little info dump that we have here. In 1977, Marvel took a bold step into the small screen world with the Amazing Spider-Man TV series. To kick off the series, they produced a made-for-TV film for everyone's favorite webhead. Oh, made-for-TV film. Okay. Sorry. Starring, we have Christopher Reeves at home, Nicholas Hammond, a bewitched David White, Dolph Lundgren's boxing manager, Michael Pataki. Written by an ABC special writer, Alvin Boretz? No,
I think it's Boretz.
Directed by the man who brought you the hard-hitting detective movie, Columbo. Columbo Goes to College.
All right.
You can read the back of the box.
All right. When extortionist threatens to force multiple suicides unless a huge ransom is paid, only Peter Parker can help him with his new powers as Spider-Man.
Okay.
They don't really mince words on the back of this box here.
No, but I mean, it's for a pitch. That's a good pitch.
I mean, if I was in an elevator, that'd be enough time to get the idea across, I suppose.
Multi self unaliving,
L-
um,
Let me take a
ransoms.
quick look in our movie database
Okay,
to see what trivia we can pull out about this movie. So apparently, this film was originally made as a pilot for the TV show, but garnered a theatrical release in a number of territories. So this actually did make it into theaters.
that's a good sign. That's a good sign.
I'm hoping it is. Peter's schoolmate is wearing a Captain America shirt in the lab in the scene where Peter gets bitten by the radioactive spider. So that's something to look out for.
That's interesting.
This pilot includes some of the few scenes of Spidey actually swinging on his web line, a costly and dangerous effect. I doubt it's that either of those for nowadays
I,
standards,
I don't know.
but at the time, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Unlike wall climbing scenes in Batman '66, which was the only previous show to do this,
Hmm.
many shots of Spider-Man climbing buildings were done live in downtown New York with invisible wires.
Oh,
So they actually did have them moving up a building instead of turning the camera sideways.
that's actually pretty cool.
Like most feature length pilots, a number of changes occurred before the regular show was commissioned. The characters of J. Jonah Jameson and Aunt May would be played by different actors in the future. Robbie Robertson was written out altogether, and there would be scenes of Spidey swinging across any skyscrapers, and the music would be different.
Huh.
Um, and at one point in the early movie, Spider-Man is seen by security guards going into Dr. Banner's lab. Dr. Banner is actually the alter ego of the
Oh,
Incredible Hulk.
I wonder if that was supposed to be a like a hey, we might have this happen later.
You know, they did have the Incredible Hulk TV show at the time with Lou Ferrigno, so it would not shock me if they had intended a crossover at some point.
That would been pretty cool.
They were both on the same channel as well.
Right. All right. Well, through the magic of podcasting, we have some community outreach about the film. Let's see here. We'll just round robin it.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Nathan Joseph Sitten Marchan. I've never seen it.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thanks for your thoughts on this movie.
Hopefully that's not indicative of what we're about to walk into, though.
I know. Well, our friend and inspiration of this show, Ben Avery, gave us a bit more of a rundown. We'll do a summary of. He said a lot, folks.
This is a
Uh,
doctoral dissertation he gave us.
for real. He said he watched this movie in 1977, and I remember one scene specifically, but I also remember sitting in the living room amazed. The effects were surprisingly mid-level for 1970s TV. So as a lad, it engaged the imagination, and as an adult, it engaged the nostalgia.
Okay.
But as a work of 1970s TV, it is above average output, action effects wise. Uh, that was hindered when CBS apparently didn't want to be known as a superhero network, something I've read about as an adult. All I knew as a kid was I liked those shows, and sometimes TV shows disappear and never heard from again.
Oh,
But I
man.
also was in Canada, so it wasn't even CBS for me. I have an idea for a season of Up from the Ashes podcast to explore superhero TV pilots, maybe crossing streams with Welcome to Level 7, the unofficial Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast. Too many ideas, too little time. But Spider Man live action is one of those memories from childhood in Canada, like Star Lost, which we covered on Up from the Ashes, that stands as a memory impacting my development into a nerd as a wee lad.
By the way, I have zero qualms with the fact that we just gave Ben several shout outs for his shows. Check out Up from the Ashes and also Welcome to Level 7. Good
Real
stuff.
talk, people. If it wasn't for Ben Avery, you wouldn't be hearing me right now because he was the man who inspired me to podcast. So,
Yeah. Some of his early stuff was actually like some of the stuff I studied to develop Geek Devotions in the early days.
let me read Dale's because if I were to read the next one, it would just be weird. So Dale, fan and friend of the podcast, the series was a tad better and a little bit more fun than this pilot.
Fair, fair.
So
All right, some Viking dude named John Harju, Harju, he says, "Not my JJJ." Um, and then he also goes, "Ah, yes, back in the day when radiation gave you more than just cancer."
I mean,
Uh,
facts. I mean, how old were you before you realized radiation couldn't give you superpowers?
right? That was legitimately a talking point people had about like everyone got their superpowers through some form of radiation in some fashion. I mean, even Superman's powers are technically from radiation.
I mean, it's surprising more people aren't throwing themselves in a particle accelerator. Is all I'm saying. Drake Tungsten says, saw this as a kid back in 1980, probably. I was into Spider-Man and thought it was great. It holds up better than the 1960s cartoon, the origin of the excellent song.
Interesting. And then FN Spider Fan, also known as Branson, he goes, I had the VHS tape with Nicholas Hammond's Spider Man that I would watch repeatedly. It was the first live action Spider Man I ever knew. There's a lot of nostalgia for it, despite the flaws. All right. So now for lower expectations.
Wah, wah, don't sue us, NBC. Dallas, why don't you go first, being as I think you're probably a little bit more familiar with this property than I am.
So, I am a fan of Spider-Man. In fact, I almost wore my Scarlet Spider hoodie for the show
And
today.
and the listeners would totally be able to tell.
Oh yeah. Well, I would have said I wear my Scarlet Spider hoodie. Shout out to my home dude John Fruitiger for hooking me up with it. Um, hooking me up with it. But the so I know Spider lore pretty well, and I know what Spider-Man was like back in the 70s. So I'm trying to limit my thought processes on that because I also know how TV series like to change things because they don't want to deal with certain things. I have vague, and I mean super vague recollections of some of this, but I don't know if it was this movie or the TV show. Like I remember being a kid at my grandparents' house, seeing some of this on TV, and I also remember when at my own house watching it and it just being on and being like, "Oh wow, Spider Man!" So, my expectations are like, okay, hopefully this is gonna be good. But at the same time, and sorry for everyone who's older than me, 70s storytelling is terrible when it comes to certain things. And so I am not excited about the storytelling. So that's mine.
Fair enough. As far as my expectations are concerned, I heard about this movie for the first time when we did the pilot movie for the Captain America
Yes.
2 years ago. And so the initial information I got when people were talking about this movie was it's not great. And then people told me it was also a pilot for a TV show from the 1970s. I'm like, oh no. Um,
He said, "Oh no."
so I'm expecting cornball cheese.
Yeah,
And to be perfectly honest, I'm almost expecting it to run the same pattern as Batman 66, where it starts out good and then it gets boring and it ends good.
I can see that.
As your wife so aptly stated when we did the Batman 66 episode.
Yeah.
So
And that's that again, that is kind of a staple of 60s, 70s storytelling where
mhm.
there's get your attention and then there's a lot of dissertation because they're still trying to figure out how to talk in movies. Even though they were in the talkies for like the last 30 years, they were still trying to figure out how to
Well,
have communication.
I think it's more a matter of trying to make superheroes palatable on a
Hmm.
TV screen.
That's fair.
Other than Batman, it was pretty unheard of at the time.
Hmm.
Except, well, I mean, like I said, CBS started picking up other TV shows, superhero TV shows. They were known as the Superhero Network
Right.
basically because of it. But I mean, I remember seeing a lot of the old Incredible Hulk shows, and they were cornball. And so, like I said, I think it was just a matter of trying to find a way to that and the comic code.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm trying to wonder. I'm not sure when the comic code was. removed? I feel like
It wasn't until the 90s, bro. Because I remember getting comics in the 90s that still had the comic code
right.
seal on it.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Granted, in the 90s they loosened up their, you didn't have people attacking people with acid ice cream cones anymore, but
Yeah. Those were the days. Those
but
darn acid ice cream cones. That was really tricky when you would get that stop the ice cream man.
bro,
The street.
literally talking about something I've seen with the Joker and old 1970
I know.
Silver Age Batman stuff,
I know, but the thing is like people. There was a legitimate thought people had, like, could they do this? Oh man. All right. Well, those are our expectations. For funsies, if you're watching on the YouTube side of things, or if you're just listening on your podcast catcher, you're gonna like, I'm gonna watch the movie also. Pause this podcast, send us your expectations somehow, leave a comment, and then go watch this movie. It's on YouTube somewhere, I promise.
Yeah, all you got to do is look up Batman, and not Batman. Look up Spider-Man 1977 movie.
Yeah.
That's how I found it.
Or if you're like Branson, pull out the VHS, blow it off, and pull out the tape deck that you have, and it's underneath the VHS player, and then hook both those up, and just jam out to some Led Zeppelin and watch this at the same time.
Yeah, Led Zeppelin would have been a thing at that time, so that would be a thing.
I made a music reference that made sense.
You did. All right, are we ready to rock and or possibly roll?
Oh, let's do this, man.
Dear listeners, this is your opportunity to escape. Our crew has just entered into the media projection chamber. What horrors and madness that they consume are unknown. Their mental state upon their return is unknown. You have been warned.
Oh, it's over.
Oh, good.
Oh,
Do we have to watch it again?
do we have to?
Yeah, we better go do it. We'll go back in there. We'll stay awake this time.
All right.
Dear listeners, this is your opportunity to escape. Our crew has just entered into the media projection chamber. What horrors and madness that they consume are unknown. Their mental state upon their return is unknown. You have been warned.
Well, I drank 6 Red Bulls, but I made it through the movie.
I know. It was
Did you know that blue tastes like strawberry?
Oh, let's talk about it.
Talk about it. All right, spoiler free.
Spoiler free.
Okay, spoiler free.
Okay, spoiler free. I'll get this ball rolling. Spoiler free. This movie moves slower than I've seen glaciers move.
I saw a video. There was this guy that does this experiment where he locked himself in a space that had no natural light of its own. He was completely cut off from all clocks and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And what was discovered was time moved differently for him while he was there. Like mentally, it moved differently. So like he went from a 24-hour day to almost a 48-hour day for him. That's how his body just naturally developed a rhythm. He'd sleep for 12 hours, go 48 hours. But what was interesting is every day, his day, he'd call and he had to count from 1 to 120, which would take about 2 minutes. By the end of the experiment, and I forgot how many weeks he was down there, in his mind, he was speaking normally, but it took him 5 minutes to count from 1 to 120 because time was moving so much slower for him. And I say that to say that video was more interesting than watching this video and how long it took me to watch this movie.
See, I thought you were going to say that would explain the time dilation I just experienced, because that movie was less than an hour and a half, but it felt like 3 hours.
It did. I was on the struggle bus. And again, this is not just a shot across the belt Spider-Man the movie, but 70s storytelling. Like, I enjoy movies from every era. I can find things in them, but 70s storytelling and 60s storytelling, it suffers with how it does dialogue and pacing and all that. And
Well, not only that, but it felt like they felt that you needed to see how people got to places before they got there in order
mhm.
to understand what was going on. So there was so much, hey, here they are walking down the street for 5 minutes. Here they are driving in a car for 3 minutes where nothing's happening that's relevant to the plot, and it's just like, look, you could just have them pull up in a car and I would know, oh, hey, they drove here. You don't have to show the entire trip.
Do you think that the awkwardness of the runtime is because they were trying to pad for the TV stuff? Because it sits right at an hour and a half.
Hmm.
So when you include commercials, you're looking at roughly 4 episodes of a 30-minute show.
I
Do
could
you think
see that. It, but they didn't release this as a multi-part episode.
that's true?
It was literally a made for TV movie with limited advertising breaks.
Right, right. I don't know. It was just the again 70s storytelling. It's
For me, I almost think that they were doing that because they didn't have enough story for an entire feature length
oh,
episode.
that
So
is a
they were
possibility.
so they padded it out to hit that hour and a
Hmm.
half marker.
I can definitely see that being a thing. I can definitely see that being a thing. And it was frustrating because I'm like, why are we spending so much time here on specific scenes? And we'll talk about that here in a minute. But the pacing was rough, ladies and gentlemen. It is a rough. Now that being said, if you are struggling with insomnia and an ability to not sleep well, if I could recommend putting this in your playlist along with your favorite Bob Ross shows.
Yo, Bob Ross. I think like this movie made Bob Ross look like Van Halen. I
Oh.
mean,
You got Spider who's like happy webs, happy webs.
put a happy web here, a little wall crawl here. Ugh. All right, so let's talk about special effects. That's not spoilery.
Let's talk about the green screening that was for some of the wall crawling.
Oh, for real, my man. Like at first, I was like, I wonder how they. Oh, they had this guy crawling around on the ground like a baby, and
Yeah.
then green screened a video of the TV behind him.
Now, legitimately, the live action wall crawl, it was cheesy, but it was effective. I was like, okay, that's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the green screen specifically that I struggled with. Expect like the first one where he's like experimenting with his powers in the front end of the movie and he's
Right.
crawling on the house.
What
You're
those
like,
these are spoiler stuff.
oh yeah, well, I apologize. But there were some moments where they just spent too much time on the green screen, and that was part of the problem. It's like,
Padding it out.
get it done because I was ruining the feel of it all.
Mm-hmm.
And it was awkward. Legitimately, there was one time, guys, where he's climbing a wall and he looks like the dude pops up on his toes and his fingers and he looks down between his legs. And it was just this really awkward moment.
Bro, it literally was like like he was doing a Spider-Man
Oh
OnlyFans
my.
shot. Like, here's my butt.
It's like you're Spider-Man, not Catman. Put down. And
Right?
so it was just awkward.
Put it down, he says.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, as soon as you said that, I'm like, I know exactly what scene you're talking about because I had a very uncomfortable moment with that scene myself.
So yeah, there was also a few moments in it. We'll get into it maybe later where it felt like the script wasn't checked for consistency. And
I need to talk about the other wall crawl effect that they used when he was actually crawling up the side of a building, and they used the invisible wires like I had said in the trivia.
right.
That didn't work so well for me because he was moving up those things faster than his hands were, and they did it like it literally looked like he was petting the walls.
Yeah.
Like he was petting them. And then they did the dumbest thing ever. At one point there was a shot where they did a close up of the hand
Yes.
and he didn't even make contact with the wall. So it was like the Demolition Man hello or be well. You know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly. Is that one on the list? Does that qualify for the
I
bottom
don't think
show?
so. I think that's rated too high.
Oh man. Oh man. But you're right. Like, and I get I'm trying to give it grace for it being the 70s. Demolition Man qualifies, by the way. Nope, never mind. That's Demolition. But the I'm trying to give it grace for no, Demolition Man does qualify. It's a 34, ladies and gentlemen,
Oh,
coming to a podcast near you. Anyways,
how fantastic.
I'm legitimately trying to give it grace because it is the 70s. This was, made for TV, and there's certain things that they got to do, and there's probably a time crunch because like we got to get this out for a TV show, guys. But it was rough to watch. Of course, we're in the era where we have good
I
wall
mean,
crawling. Like even
facts.
the worst Spider-Man movies ever of the modern era have decent wall crawling.
Decent web shooting too.
Yeah.
Didn't look like silly string, nylon rope, or Spirit Halloween cobwebs.
So, like the only thing that would have made I'm gonna put the thing that would have helped me so much throughout the entirety of the film was if we had a group of people who were Mystery Science Theater 3000 it the entire time.
Oh, for sure. Like this would have been the one that we should have done live, like
Yeah.
all together, because I'm just trying to picture you, me, and Bam in the same room, just unloading. Well, you and me would be unloading on it, and Bam would be like, "Come on, guys."
I don't know. Branson's good enough to see the cheese, and so he'll call out the cheese. He'll still love the cheese, but he'll call the cheese out.
Sometimes I'm almost afraid, like when he watched this movie, he watched it with rose-colored glasses just because of how much he loves the character of Spider-Man to begin with.
I mean, him and Ben both admit there's a lot of nostalgia for it, and
Mhm.
we've had movies that I've had nostalgia for that I loved, and you guys were like, "This is trash." I'm
Oh,
like,
you mean like? Well, I couldn't say like the last movie because that wasn't a nostalgia. That was just poor judgment on your part. But
yeah, that's more judgment on my part. No, but it's just one of those things. But yeah, no, it was rough. You got anything else that's spoiler free that we can talk about?
no,
Oh,
I
the
wanted.
music.
Oh, you mean the Price is Right B-roll music? Like for y'all go back to the Bob Barker era, like late 70s Price is Right. Like the ba-da ba ba da ba-da ba da ba-da ba da 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 da.
It was like
That
that pop funk that they were trying to do. It was like
it
it wasn't even good pop funk.
no, it was like elevator jazz fusion. It was so not good. It was easy listening disco.
Right?
And
John Travolta's like, I can't get down with this.
I mean, I shot a message like when we were watching this. I shot a message out talking about calling it Price is Right B-roll, and your wife commented back saying it reminded her of Dragnet. So
Mhm.
I mean, if that connects with some people, there you go. But
But again, 70s TV shows.
I know, but it was in the time when there was such good music they could have used. They had Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath still had Ozzy Osbourne.
But 70s TV problem is you're right. If this was a feature like an actual movie with a major company behind
But
it.
bro, like most of these bands weren't even quite in their heyday yet. Like you could have grabbed Aerosmith. Aerosmith didn't even start making albums until 73. So they've
Yes.
only been 4 years out.
But they still had labels who were like, mine make me money. Whereas what the TV shows, because they're pumping out stuff constantly, they got a backlog of like just like we paid some dude 10 cents and we own his soul now music.
I'm just saying.
I agree.
Like,
music could have been better.
music could have been a lot better.
I'd be interested to see you rescore the movie.
I don't know that I would want to watch it again to do that.
Well, we've already watched it 1.5 times. Might as well again.
No thanks.
I don't. I think music. I think that was part of the problem, though, John, with the pacing, is the music didn't help.
No.
If it had better music, this is a case where better music would have tremendously helped so many scenes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I 100% agree with that.
And so, all right, let's go to spoiler conversations.
Ladies and gentlemen, the spoiler section.
Real talk, why did the spoiler section bumper sound better than the music in the movie?
Because the real talk bumper the spoiler bumper was better music than the movie.
All right, ladies and
Facts.
gentlemen, we're gonna get into this is where we're gonna spoil the film, and so buckle up, hang loose. We're gonna talk about this film together. First off, um, did they purposely make this dude look like Christopher Reeves in this movie? Like,
You know, it wouldn't shock me. When did the first Superman movie come out?
let me IMDb it. It was pretty close around the same times. Superman. Well, okay, 1978.
Okay.
But
So,
maybe that was just the stereotypical pretty boy look.
I mean, it could be. Like, guys kind of had that haircut throughout this movie, so I could see that, but
Yeah.
I'm picking up what you're putting down. I will say that Peter Parker's lab partner would have made a better Peter Parker than the guy who they had playing Peter Parker would have.
I think that
He had more of a personality than this guy for sure.
yeah. He just came off as like it didn't again, I try to give it grace because I know that they take things and they do things differently, but it didn't feel like Peter Parker at all. Outside the fact that he was broke and he was always asking for like a $1.50. Like that's like it's what it felt like. He's like, "You got a $1.50?" Like it wasn't a $1.50. He was like wanting $47, which by the way, I translated out the money he was asking for is like $230 today. But I get it. He's broke. And but that was the only Peter Parky thing he was. He wasn't endearing. He wasn't funny. He wasn't a geeky
He
um
wasn't sarcastic.
yeah, like just all the elements that make Peter Parker weren't there. And they weren't there in a okay, but we're gonna make it a good replacement. You know, you have the vast Spider-Verse. We have all these different Peter Parkers, like Spider-Man Noir and all these other things. And they removed a lot of what made Peter Parker, but they're still fascinating and they're still a core. Like the motivation for this Spider-Man was non-existent outside of the fact that he was poor and he wanted to make money. What
Bro was the mayonnaise of Peter Parker's.
I just realized that his motivation was the motivation for Spider-Man in the first movie, in the first issue of the comic, which was I want to make money. But it wasn't. But instead of like just going and being a wrestler, it was let me help people.
I was waiting for Bonesaw to show up.
Bone Souls ready.
Also, want to point out the fact that the his lab partner completely destroyed the logic behind the origin story in this movie, because he was just like, man, if there's any kind of a leak, it's going to be you're going to completely die for the sake of science, and talking about how all that radiation would just kill you.
Right.
Well, if it's going to kill you, it's going to kill that spider that was in the tank. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it just completely logically killed the movie.
Right.
I'm like,
And the manifestation of his powers, like it was so quick. He's walking out from like he leaves the lab, goes picks up his meds, and then all of a sudden he's like, "Let me climb a wall." But granted, he's being chased, but I mean, like there was nothing to this. It was just like, bam, here we go, and he just knows what he's doing.
And he didn't realize he climbed the wall until after he was done. It wasn't a jump up on the wall and be like, "What the crap?"
And
It
as
was,
slow as he climbed, oh my gosh.
the police captain was overkill. Like Jim Carrey levels of overacting.
I can see that.
It was just like he had one gear and it was constantly angry and yelling. That man should have been the J. Jonah Jameson in this movie.
That would have been pretty lit, actually. That would have been a real good recast.
Then I wouldn't have had that not my JJJ comment that I threw down. Like if you guys see my comments that I had made in the community interaction segment, I made that literally while I was watching the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, to take you outside of the TV, to take you outside of our show's lore, that is legit what was happening. And J. Jonah Jameson is one of my favorite characters in Spider-Man.
Really?
Like I like when I play the games, I specifically listen to his podcasts that he puts out because they just amuse me. His anger and blatant hypocrisy makes me laugh. It makes me giggle like a Hanson fan, you know.
Like a Hanson fan. That's fair. Fair.
So just how big of a swing and a miss it was with the personality in this movie, just it offended me on some level.
I get that. I really get that. Um, Another thing that just didn't make sense to me was all he's done is climbed up a wall, and then he's basically pivoting in the middle of a meeting with Jay Jonah, trying to go. I got pictures of Spider-Man, and he's great. He's making up stuff on as he goes, but all of a sudden he's like, yeah, he climbed walls, but also he's super strong, like proportionally stronger for a man of his size, and he can spin webs, and he's saying all these things. I'm like, how do you know this? Like, to date, he's never spun a web. He's not done anything that requires strength. All he did was slowly climb up a wall and then awkwardly walk on a green screen at his mom's house, at his aunt's house. Like, that's all he's done to date. Like, there were no acts of strength, and there was no conversation about web spinning whatsoever. And he just, again, this is what I was talking about earlier about it feels like they did not think about the script very well in continuity. Like, there was a whole scene at the beginning of the movie where they're watching the television, and the news comes out about the extortion of the city with the terrorist. And Jay Jones like, why is this on TV? Why don't we have this? And then they're planning this. The next scene, Peter's left there. He's gone to the lab, and his lab partner's like talking. He goes, haven't you read the papers? It's all in the papers. No, it's not. They literally just said it's not in the paper. They're planning it right then and there when you left the building, you dingbat.
Right. I will say there was one moment where they did show the super strength when that guy was pinned behind the wheel, and
Yes.
so
Yes.
they did show that. So,
But not till after he said there was super strength.
I know, but I'm just saying maybe he just knew, in the same way that he just knew he could climb up the building. So,
I guess so.
what else is there?
How about the relationship with Homegirl, where it was like, hey, your dad almost died. Want to hang out?
Right. That's completely how it was. But again, like that's kind of how it works out with these types of TV shows. Like I don't know, have you ever seen Greatest American Hero?
Mm-mm.
There were a lot of parallels I could draw between the pilot for that movie and the pilot for this.
Right.
Although Greatest American Hero actually entertained me. But yeah, they just ham-fistedly throw a love interest in there for you to will they won't they over. So
Right.
I was a little bit shocked that they didn't have it be MJ. So
that was one of the things that threw me off. MJ or Gwen. It has to be one of the two,
right.
in my opinion.
And the thing about it is the only thing in this movie that had to do with the Spider-Man universe that they had in it was Spider-Man and J. Jonah Jameson. Everything else was just original IP.
Right.
Like the entire 2/3 of this movie, I spent thinking to myself, okay, who's the villain going to be? You know, because everybody knows that I love villains in superhero stories.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is it going to, with it being hypnosis and all that, it's probably going to be Mysterio. That's going to be awesome. Can't wait to. And it turned out to be that the super villain was some guy,
a cult leader.
No, just some guy. I went out looking in the database after that, and apparently for the entirety of the TV series, they decided to steer away from doing super villains, and the Spider-Man only fought against like practical villains and bank robbers and stuff like that. So you never got anything that would have constituted as any sort of Marvel property for those villains
who are in the know. Is this a rights issue? Was it a matter that they couldn't afford the rights to the other characters? All they could afford was the right to Spider-Man and Spider-Man-ish things.
It wasn't, because that was part of how I looked it up. I'm going to pull that up real quick.
While you're pulling that up, while we're talking about random villains, why were there random, like absolutely out of the blue, random Kinto fighters that just pop up in the bad guy's lair?
I had the same question.
like out of the blue, like he's sneaking around. Let me lay this out. He's sneaking around the bad guy's lair, guys. And this is the bad guy is a Caucasian businessman, cult leader type of guy who's been hypnotizing people. And randomly, 3 Kento fighters come out and they're attacking Spider-Man. And you're like, what? Like, where did you guys come from? Like, nothing, like, nothing makes sense here. They're just like, let's throw this in here. And then granted, I give you sometimes the in comics, weird things just happen. They just kind of pop out. But this was really super random, guys.
All right. So basically what I have here, this is reading directly from IMDb, okay? It
Mhm.
says, "In an attempt to keep the show rooted in reality and keep costs controllable, the show's producers decided, for better or worse, to have Spider-Man take on real-life criminals instead of the supervillains from the comics. This was a wasted opportunity considering that there are numerous major Spider-Man villains who are relatively down to earth in concept and could have been depicted inexpensively, such as the Chameleon, Craven the Hunter, Mysterio, the Enforcers, and Wilson Fisk, amongst others."
Yeah.
So they just did, for me, it was just laziness.
Right. I'm going back through the IMDb now. I'm trying to find if I can find anything whatsoever about these Kento fighters. And they're not even listed as cast on IMDb. And at the end of the movie, like they have these like promotional shots with them that Spider-Man took for money purposes for because he needs his $47. And
No, he got the $47 from the lady that he started dating after
oh
he
yeah, yeah. That's true. Didn't even need any money anymore. Didn't need the money at all. But it was just so random. And they just threw it in there. You're like, is it why? Why are we doing this? Oh my goodness.
I think it was just because at the time the whole kung fu karate coming to America via Bruce Lee was a thing. And so it was just like, hey, this is hot with the kids right now. Let's throw this in and blah, 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 blah. Because that's how TV executives thought back in the day. It didn't have to make sense as long as it was something that would sell.
Right. Uh, I don't know. It was just strange to me for some reason. Speaking of straight, that whole thing with the Kento fighters, my dude webs them to the ground in the most useless way. Celeste's words were, "Did they go to Spirit Halloween to get his web shooters?" Because literally, it's just like a
Here's a
floaty.
blanket if you're cold.
It wasn't even that. It's like, here's a little cotton. Here you go, guys. Let me tuck you in, Mr. Kento Fighter. And then like he runs out and like literally, it's like they went, oh, take this off and kept chasing him. Like it did nothing. Like did you guys read a Spider-Man comic? Like did you just look at the cover of one and went, okay, so he wears red and he wears blue and he has some funny shaped eyes. And
It was almost like it was an accidental discharge. It was just, if you or your loved one has
Oh, no.
overactive web bladders, please call. You may be entitled for compensation. Like it was almost like I expected him to apologize. Oh, sorry guys, it just happened.
It's got to have like a web diaper.
Oh no, I wet my hands.
Oh man, depends. You missed the opportunity to do some marketing right there. Depends. All right. Another thing that was strange, the random like going back to your conversation with JJ, how he just randomly is angry at Spider-Man at the end. Like there's no reason given. And he's never really had a good reason except well, I take it back. There is a comic where it gives reasoning, but even in the comics, like he didn't like Spider-Man from the beginning at all, period. But in this, like it was just so random. He's like, he's a terrible person. I'm like, what? Like, where did this come from? And then the final words of Peter Parker in the final movie, when he's like, how did you do this? He goes, easy, I believe.
Okay, so that puts Spider-Man in the Santa Claus universe now.
I was waiting for him to pop up a canister of Mentos and walk away.
Do 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 ah.
Little jump and a little click of his heels as he walks down the street.
I wanted to catch that pause frame, him midair with his thumb up,
Meanwhile, in the background, Bruce Banner's just like, stupid happy endings.
Playing the sad walking away music.
And then it all just like it becomes a stylized, like dramatic look, like a JoJo scene from JoJo's Bizarre Adventures. That'd be great.
Na 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 na.
Oh my goodness.
Ugh. All right, so this was not a good movie, people. I know we normally save that for the ratings, but this was not great. Let's go ahead and get to the rating, unless you got something else to say here, Dallas.
Just one more gripe I had, which was the fact that Peter's constant sneezing was simply so he could drop his device that I wasn't sure what it was doing.
He was trying to track the microwaves that was being used to control the hypnotized people.
Right. He was already there. Like he passed the window and then he was on top of the building. I'm like, you're already there. Just go in the window.
I don't know.
And he goes, achoo, and he drops it. I'm like,
it was the only time to be fair, they set it up with Aunt May telling him, "Did you take your allergy medication?"
Right.
But this was the only time in the movie where he was sneezing. Like
constantly.
he was sneezing over and over and over and over again until he dropped it.
Right.
And then the moment he stepped off the roof, he never sneezed again. It was like, I think he was just allergic to that roof.
Possibly.
All right, well, let's go ahead and rate this movie. I'll go ahead and run. Oh, actually, I won't because I don't have my notes in front of me anymore. Dallas, why don't you go ahead and explain the rating reasons in case someone's new to the show?
Yeah, so here at the bottom shelf, we have a multi-tier rating system for every movie we watch. As you guys know, it's a journey that we're going through to watch these films and rate them. And so we have the top shelf, which is where we go, you know what? I need to own this. This is a great movie. I love it. I need it. Then you have middle shelf, which is, I'd watch it maybe if it was streaming. And then you have bottom shelf, we're like, oh gosh, no, this is not a good movie. And I will probably never watch it again, actively, ever. And then we have the dumpster fire, which is where we go, I will actively try to keep people from watching this movie, period, in a discussion.
All right. Well, being as you were kind enough to read that because I was dumb enough to close my notes before we were done with the show, why don't you go ahead and give your rating first?
Yeah, so this is not a good movie, and we know it's not a good movie. But contrary to other Spider-Man movies that no longer exist in our timeline, it didn't make me angry. Like, it made more sense, and I could follow it. And again, it's time locked in the 70s, a TV movie 70s. So I have a little bit more grace for it. So it's not a dumpster fire, but it is a hard bottom shelf. Like last time I said it's like dangling from the bottom shelf over the dumpster fire. This movie is standing over it like Scar over Mufasa, going "Long live the king" on Madam Web. That's what's happening here.
That just made me think of that meme that you see of that guy who's standing on a podium, just dumping champagne over his face, giving the finger to everybody, all that, and then they're like in 8th place. Like that's this movie right here.
Yeah, basically. Oh my gosh.
As far as my rating is concerned, I want to dumpster fire this so bad.
Mhm.
Like this movie made me so bored while I was watching it. I know we did that little bit for the watching the movie where we had to watch it twice. I don't know that I could watch this twice. Although there was something that was said at the beginning of this podcast that steered me off of dumpster firing it, which was when you said this would be a good movie to MST3K.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think under those circumstances, I probably would watch this again.
Mhm.
So given that saved it from the flames of the dumpster, I too am going to like this is. Did you ever see the movie The Naked Gun?
Yeah.
You remember at the end where Ricardo Montalban got run over by the steamroller?
Mm-hmm.
That's this movie on the bottom shelf. Like it's on the bottom shelf and it got steamrollered into the bottom shelf so hard it's completely flat with the bottom of the bottom shelf. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'll give you that. It really is though. It would be a great get the gang together and let's just have some popcorn and make fun and have fun with the film.
Yeah,
Um,
but don't watch it by yourself. It's not good. It's not meant for human consumption. It's
FDA not approved.
it's bad. Like the reason, like legitimately, if you listen to what Dallas and I are saying right now, the only way this movie is good is if you have friends that are going to be there to bring the entertainment to the movie. Do you see what I'm saying? Like this
Yeah.
movie, this movie, like I made the joke earlier that this Peter Parker was the mayonnaise of Peter Parker. Well, he's the mayonnaise, and this movie is the white bread of Spider-Man movies. So it's a mayonnaise on white bread sandwich is what it is.
Walmart brand, great value white bread.
Exactly. Like the 99 cents a loaf white bread.
Oh my goodness.
All
All right.
right.
Well, it's
Let
unanimous, ladies and gentlemen.
bottom shelf. Let's speed through this because I don't want to talk about this movie anymore.
This is a weak connection.
Welcome to the Weak Connection section of this podcast, where we try to find something redemptive or spiritual or possibly both in regards to this load of crap that we just forced ourselves to sit through for your enjoyment. Captain Dallas, do you have something to share with us to possibly redeem or
I do.
give glory with?
I do indeed. So the premise of this whole movie is simply the fact that there is the terrorist. He's unfortunately preying on people's insecurities and wanting to manipulate them. And they're looking for some form of success, but not at the same time. It was very confusing. I'm not sure he knew what he was selling either, but he was manipulating people who had put themselves in places where they were looking for something else. Judy, the Peter's very quick love interest that he suddenly falls in love with after her dad almost dies. She was like, she's just distraught, and she's like, I'm going to do this, and she allows herself to be captured by the enemy, and literally, her mind just captured. And what he's doing is he's controlling their minds, he's manipulating them, and unfortunately, this happens a lot with people who deal with grief and deal with certain things where they give their minds to certain things. And my thoughts are about Colossians chapter 3, verse 2, and the church Colossae. They're dealing with some stuff. There's some heresy seeping in, some early Gnosticism and other kinds of junk. People are going, well, maybe this is good too. Maybe this is good. And Paul is bringing correction. He goes, hey, set your minds on things of above, not the things of the earth. And so set your things on scripture, set your things on what God has for you. And that's key for a lot of things when we're dealing with grief and depression, anxiety and fears, when we're dealing with loss, when we're dealing with various other aspects of life, when we're dealing with just life. We have to keep our mind on things above, because when we have that mindset of like, well, what actually pleases the Lord, what is taking place, it helps us to navigate and respond correctly to life situation. Life happens. It sucks. It's terrible sometimes. God doesn't promise the Christian life as a, hey, sunshine and rainbows all the time. Life sucks because we live in a fallen world. But if we keep our mind on Christ, we respond appropriately to the things of the world, and we navigate appropriately. And that includes a variety of things it's going to take a much longer podcast for us to unpack. But that's my weak connection for you today.
All right. I got one. I don't have a specific scriptural reference to throw in there, but it comes down to the scene where Peter Parker and J. Jonah Jameson are talking about Spider-Man for the first time. And Jameson says, so what's his deal? Why does he do it? And he goes, to help people. I mean, if you got these great powers, what would you do? And he's like,
Right.
I joined the circus. And it comes down to the giftings that God gives you in your life. Everybody has a gifting of some sort.
Yeah.
And there's two paths people take with it, but ultimately what it comes down to is God doesn't give you a gifting to serve yourself for your own personal enjoyment. It doesn't mean that you can't enjoy your gifting, but that's not the reason why he gave it to you. He gave it to you to help others, to serve others, for his glory. And so take a brief moment of introspection and just think about what are your giftings and what are you doing with them.
Yeah.
Because I can promise you that the world is in the condition that it's in now because people use their giftings selfishly.
Totally.
And if you can step outside of yourself and use that to serve others and bring others to a better place, and if that can impact other people to do the same, then that's a step forward to, going to the 1970s dogma of teach the world to sing or have a Coke and smile. It does it advances the kingdom, but it also will make your portion of the world a better place to be in. So
Yeah. Good stuff, man. I like it.
yeah, I kind of came up with it on the spot. It just popped in there. Otherwise, I'd have scripture and have it a little bit more thought out. But
No, it's good though, man. There's a lot to that whole aspect of like using your gifts to help people,
Yep.
not just being selfish about things
or making money.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
yeah.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and shut this down, Mr. Mora. How do we do that again?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to our episode today. If you have enjoyed it, if you liked it, do us a favor, share out the podcast with all your friends. Be like, hey, I have this podcast where we're talking about terrible movies. Check it out. And do us a favor, like it on YouTube, hit the share button, all that good stuff. But interact with us. Ladies and gentlemen, we are part of the Geek Devotions Podcast Network, and there's a whole lot of things happening there. We have the Spider Fan podcast. We have We Read Allegedly, which John is part of. We have Com Talk. We have the Gundam Watch, and we have various other projects happening all the time. And you can find all that at geekdevotions.com. You can find John at a link tree that we'll have in the description down below, including several projects he does, including playing games with strangers and whatnot. But also, we have a Discord channel for Geek Devotions and a Facebook group. Facebook group is called Devoted Geek Life.
Geeks.
And then we have a Discord channel, which we'll have a link in the show notes below. Interact with us, guys. Tell us how you like the episodes. Tell us you don't like the episodes. Be kind, be courteous, but do life with us.
And we do respond to people. We do talk with people quite in depth on the Discord. So if you really want to interact with us, that's the place to do it.
Yeah, we had a whole conversation. We for our community outreaches, that's where we get it from is our Discord, and there was some miscommunication. They thought we were talking about the animated cartoon from the 70s, not this movie, which honestly would have been a better thing for us to talk about. But anyways,
probably a more mature storyline too.
But there's a whole conversation took place there today, and we like to talk with you guys. So I think that's about it, John.
All right. Well, until next time, stay devoted.
Peace and love.